Join the Rising Tide Mastermind. Discover a community where passionate professionals come together to support each other's growth. Be part of a tribe that celebrates your wins and helps you overcome challenges. Don't navigate your journey alone. Find your community with us, the Rising Tide Mastermind. To find out more about the Rising Tide Mastermind, go to scalinguph2o.com/mastermind. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/mastermind. Find out if the Rising Tide Mastermind is right for you. Welcome to the Scaling Up H2O podcast, the podcast where we scale up on knowledge so we don't scale up our systems. I'm your host, Trace Blackmore, and Nation, today is more about what we've been talking about over the past couple of weeks. It seems we've been talking a lot about the Association of Water Technologies, and why not talk about the Association of Water Technologies? If you are in the type of industrial water treatment that I am, the AWT is the place for you to make your career better, for you to meet new people, for you to take new classes, for you to do other things than what you are doing on your own, because it provides you with a network. And I've been involved with AWT since 1994. That was the first time I ever went to an AWT convention. I went with my father, and let me tell you, it was much different than what it is today. I remember a couple of card tables in a sort of small room up in the Washington, D.C. area. My dad and I went there. We didn't even spend the night. There was enough for us to do over a day, and then we went home. And we were like, wow, this is really cool. All these people do the same thing that we do. But now look at it, and my dad actually got to see the AWT the year that I was president. That was back in 2011, and we had the convention here in my hometown of Atlanta. My dad came down, and he had not been to an AWT convention since '94, and he could not believe what has happened to the association. Of course, all positive. And now in 2026, of course, our last convention was 2025. When you see what the association's annual convention and expo has become, it is amazing. Literally a one-stop shop for everybody that you are going to need in your business. And you get to meet all these people that know exactly what it is that you do. And you might meet somebody that becomes a lifelong friend. I know I've talked about that several times during the last couple of weeks on how I've met people through the Association of Water Technologies that I would have never have met. Even though we are in the same industry, there was no way for me to meet them. And Nation, that's why I push that magic button so much for any convention that you go to or training, especially if it's AWT, but it works anywhere. What you do is you get one of those magic buttons from me or somebody on my team. And normally at a convention or an exhibit hall, there are several people that have those that they can give them to you. And then you put that on your lanyard, you put that on your badge, your ID. And as you walk around, you'll see other people with those. And then the magic takes place. The ice is broken. You can instantly go up to somebody and say, hey, I listened to that podcast too. What's one of your favorite episodes? And that gets a conversation started. Now, I talk a lot about my friend Mark Lewis on this podcast. And Mark and I met in Palm Springs back in 2004. And we met because we were at an AWT convention and we were both volunteering to help out before the general session. And one of our mentors, Jay Farmery, said, hey, can you put the minutes from the last general meeting at each table? And that's what Mark and I were doing. And one of us had too many copies. One of us didn't have enough copies. So that forced us to talk to each other to get the copies the other one needed. And that started the conversation that started a lifelong friendship. And if you have somebody that you call friend that is in this industry, I know you're glad you have them, because there are just things out there that we see that nobody else understands. And then having somebody that understands what it is that we are seeing so we can have a conversation with them, maybe even springboard some ideas, makes us both better. And organizations like the AWT are the catalyst for that becoming what I just described. So, Nation, I hope when I list all the different events that we're promoting on each of our episodes, that you're thinking, which one of these can I go to? And I'm also hoping that you were thinking, who can I meet? And I know for some of us, at least half the population, meeting new people is terrifying, but maybe you turn it into a task. Hey, my job is, while I'm going to be here for an entire week, I'm going to meet 3 new people. And you can pace yourself throughout there. And trust me, if you have that magic button, especially at an AWT event, that is going to make that job so much easier. And of course, the magic button is the Scaling Up H2O pin that so many of you have. By the way, I think we have 4 versions of that, and I will see people that will have all 4 versions where we've updated our logo in the past. I've seen other people that have 14 of them on. They proudly display them as a badge or badges of honor. But all of that is so we can create community in places that may be a little bit scary. For others of you, you might be thinking, oh my gosh, I only have to meet 3 people? How boring is that? I want to meet everybody there. So we want to make sure that you know what is going on, when it's going on, so you can become better industrial water treaters and you can increase your network. Well, let's go ahead and talk about some of the events that are coming up. Coming up April 28th through 30th is the 99th Annual Arizona Water Conference and Exhibition. This is Arizona's largest conference and trade show for people in our industry. It is all about water. It is taking place at the Phoenix Convention Center, and it is 3 days designed around professional development, continuing education, technology, and all about a vision of a vibrant Arizona through safe, reliable water. We're going to have all of the information that you're going to need for this conference on our events page. And of course, you can go to scalinguph2o.com/events, or just go to scalinguph2o.com and navigate over to our events page. And of course, while you are there, you are going to see so many things that you did not know that were going on. And we want to make it as easy as possible for you to learn about the events that are coming close to you. So maybe you don't even have to travel. And we made that easy. All you have to do is go to that webpage and you can find out what events you should be going to. Another event that's happening just around the corner is the American Boiler Manufacturers Association is having their expo in Nashville, Tennessee, one of my favorite towns. If you haven't been to Nashville, that is a great town. They're having it at the Gaylord Opryland Resort, and that's going to be March 31st through April 2nd. Now, next week, we're actually going to interview some people from the American Boiler Manufacturers Association, so you're not going to want to miss that. And there are just so many things that are going to go on at that exhibition. So we're going to make sure to have all of that information for you on our events page. And of course, while you're on that events page, go ahead and navigate to November. You've got plenty of time for it. But since we're talking about AWT, the 2026 Technical Training Seminars Volume 2 is taking place November 11th through 14th. And Nation, let me tell you, this is one of the best places if you practice water treatment the way that I do, for you to learn new things, for you to feel more confident in the things that you do know, and of course, a great way for you to figure out who you don't know in this industry so you can meet some new people. Now, I'm talking way out in November, before November, September 16th through 19th. In Oklahoma City, Oklahoma is the next AWT convention. So you got plenty of time to register for those, but it will sneak up on you. So if you haven't made plans yet, maybe this is your reminder to go ahead and figure out how you're going to go to the next conference that you're going to go to, and you're going to go ahead and make arrangements for that now. We've got it so easy for you to do that. Just go to scalinguph2o.com/events. Somebody else that makes it so easy for us to learn something new each and every week while it's so entertaining is our friend James McDonald, and here is a brand new Words of Water.
Hello and welcome to Words of Water with James, the industrial water game show where I give you the definition and you get to guess the word or phrase being defined. Will you rise to the top or get blown down to try your luck another day? There's only one way to find out on Words of Water with James. Today's definition is a thin barrier that only permits passage of certain particulates or compounds to pass through but inhibits others. It is a semi-permeable skin of which the pass-through is determined by the size or special nature of the particles or compounds. Can you guess the word? The answer is membrane. Okay, for those who got it correct, step to the right. For those who got it wrong, please step to the left. There's a ladder on the right when you're ready. I'm James McDonald, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Words of Water with James.
Well, thank you, James. And Nation, like I said, the last couple of weeks we've been talking about the Association of Water Technologies. We're going to continue with that today. And today's guest is going to maybe fill you in on some of the gaps you never knew about the Association of Water Technologies. I sure had a fun time with this guest, and I'm keeping you in suspense, so I'll do that no more. Here is that interview. Today, my lab partner is Tom Brandvold, president at Premier Water and Energy Technologies and former president of the Association of Water Technologies. Tom, welcome to the Scaling Up H2O podcast.
Hi, Trace. Great to be with you and your guests. Thanks for having me.
You are most welcome. And this isn't the first time you've been on this podcast. You were on before, episode 154. That was way back in September of 2020. Can you even remember that far back?
Well, I can. That was an interesting month, to say the least. And then the 6 months or so that led up to it, when we realized that our convention that year was going to be virtual and was not going to be in person. It made for a very interesting summer and fall leading up to that convention.
And we're definitely going to talk about that because you had the most unique convention planning experience out of all boards, I would say, with the Association of Water Technologies. But before we talk about that and so many other things, do you mind introducing yourself to the Scaling Up Nation?
Yeah, my pleasure. Again, my name is Tom Brandvold. I am president of Premier Water and Energy Technology in Jacksonville, Florida, as well as a division leader for CRB Water in the Southeast. Gosh, my background, Trace, I was kind of born into a water treatment world. My dad was actually interviewed and hired by John Betts back in the early 60s. He started his career with Nalco, and a short time later was hired by Betts, worked up in the Midwest, and then they asked him to open the Southeast. And so he moved us to Jacksonville, Florida, where he established Betts Laboratories in the Southeast, and had a run of 7 or 8 years with them, and then went to work for a surfactant manufacturer in Chicago. And then a lot of people don't know this, but then he worked for Hach for a period of time, well before Danaher, of course. He worked for Hach. We moved to Ames, Iowa, and then moved back to Jacksonville when he established the predecessor company to Premier, which was called Brandchemco. And many of your longtime listeners and veterans in the water treatment space will remember Brandchemco as one of the founding companies of AWT.
So, Tom, you've always known about water treatment. It's been part of your life.
Oh my gosh, I can remember, Trace, as an 11, 12, 13-year-old, sweeping floors, emptying garbage cans, washing out water sample bottles. And then as I got a little older, running QC tests in our lab on finished goods before they were packaged. And then I can remember running water analysis for our field sales service team, and then graduating into the plant where I actually was doing plant production and packaging. When I got to about 16 and could drive, they actually gave me a route of closed, chilled, and hot water loops where I was running nitrites, iron, coppers, pHs, and so forth on a service route. Then as I got older, took on more sophisticated accounts. Actually, I had some boilers and cooling towers, and started learning about refrigeration and air conditioning and steam production. And from there, started to have a sales and service territory. And through college, I worked a sales service territory that consisted of the panhandle of Florida, Southwest Georgia, and some in Jacksonville. I mean, that was just a super interesting period, just immersed with all things water treatment and seeing things every day that just built on my foundation of water treatment knowledge. So that's kind of my journey through the Brandchemco days.
Did you ever consider doing something besides water treatment?
Well, I always felt like I should have been a race car driver or a golf professional,
There you go.
but those things didn't work out. But once you get going, and once you realize that this is such an interesting profession, and when I tell people even today, when you get really good at what we do, you have a skill set that not a lot of people in the world have. Ours is a very unique industry with a really diverse requirement for technical knowledge and people skills and application skills. And as I got more and more immersed in it, I thought, you know what, this is something I could really sink my teeth into. And then, of course, I had the opportunity to buy the business and rebrand it. That was in 1986. And that's when we became Premier Water and Energy Technology. And of course, we were kind of on our way as Premier at that point.
Now, you alluded to your father was one of the founding members. He was the founding member. I don't think a lot of people in the Scaling Up Nation know the origin story of AWT. Do you mind sharing that with us?
Well, sure. It was rather complicated. I can remember my dad and I talking in the early 80s about farmers had co-ops in the Midwest. There were dairy co-ops and there were crop co-ops. And I can remember talking to my dad. I said, wouldn't it be cool if all the independent water treaters would get together and, gosh, we could put together all our purchases for sulfites and phosphates and polymers and negotiate deals with manufacturers where we were buying at the same prices that the Nalcos and Bettses of the world were. And somewhere along that journey, from a kind of a group purchasing idea, co-op idea, there became an insurance crisis in our industry. And what it effectively did, Trace, was eliminated the marketplace for product liability and completed operations, including pollution coverage, across the chemical industry. And we got caught up with the big guys, and anybody that was involved in chemicals just found it nearly impossible to acquire product liability insurance. So my dad and some other folks got together and said, well, maybe group purchasing isn't the idea. Maybe we need to form an insurance captive and kind of self-insure our industry and our space. We know it. We know the risk. We know what's involved. And so that's what they did. A group of about 5 guys got together and said, okay, let's do this. And what we found out very quickly was that in order to facilitate having an insurance operation, that we needed an association. And the insurance coverages could be a benefit that accrued to members of the association. And Trace, there were a bunch of legal things around why that was structured that way. So really the association was founded so that those who joined could have access to this captive insurance market where we were self-insuring so that all of us could stay in business. It was a time where if you could get insurance, it became so expensive. I know for us at the time, we were paying $10,000 or $11,000 a year for our products liability and completed operations, pollution coverage, and it was $10,000 or $11,000. And the quote we got from the only company we could find that would write it went to $110,000. And, this was in the 80s, and that was a huge number back then. And it would have effectively put a bunch of us out of business. So that's the genesis, if you will, of the association. And then again, these guys had got together and founded this, and insurance was the main reason. But we saw a bunch of collaborative opportunities around education and technical papers and meetings, and just a way to grow the industry and support the independent water treater. And so the association, of course, grew from an insurance captive into kind of what it is today.
I will say my life and my knowledge about industrial water treatment would not be the same without AWT. So I'm so glad. Was it 1985 it was founded?
Yeah, that's about right. Yep, 85.
Yeah, so 85, nobody could get insurance, and what it's evolved to today is just astounding. I mean, it's amazing all the programs that AWT offers now.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And again, I had mentors, and I'm sure you had mentors as well. But, an internal mentor versus a collaborative mentor that you meet through AWT just reinforced so much that I learned. And the gaining access to the knowledge across our space from these other AWT members has been just, it's life-changing. And we use, of course, all the resources AWT has, training, convention, et cetera, for our team. And it's just been a terrific asset to help us grow our company.
What are some of the ways that you volunteered for AWT over the years?
Well, it's interesting you asked that. Way back, the first involvement I had at AWT was on what was called the marketing committee then. And the charge that we were given as the marketing committee was to come up with tools for members that would allow us to compete with the Betses and Nowcos of the world. And so I can remember working together with some other AWT members, and we were developing some marketing literature. We were developing some proposal things, some standardized proposals, some ways of standardizing calculations and feed rates and that kind of thing. And what was funny is as we got to where we were delivering finished products to the membership, everybody on that committee started realizing that I'm creating stuff that's going to allow my other independent water treaters to compete against me. and it was kind of a very interesting situation, and some of the people on the committee felt threatened, and it was a dynamic that is comes up a little bit today, especially in the area of retaining our key people and recruiting and that kind of thing. But that was my first involvement in my volunteer role. And then, Trace, I don't even, like you, I can't even tell you the various committees I've been on over the years. Today, I'm on the convention committee. I'm on the business resource committee and on the reconstituted membership committee that Steve Hellier is chairing. So I'm involved in 3 committees at this point.
And you're a past president.
I am. I had the privilege of being elected president and served that during my COVID year, as you mentioned. It was interesting. Served my term during the COVID year.
Now, one of the things the board does, specifically the president-elect and a little bit of the president, and back in my day, you can tell me if it's changed, was you had to arrange the entire convention. What was it like to arrange a convention that wasn't in person? We were having lockdowns. We were in the middle of a pandemic. How did you pull that off?
Well, Heidi Zimmerman was a huge resource navigating all that. Had a great board at the time, and the convention committee was outstanding. I was a small cog in that machine that pulled that off. But that was the year we were due to go to Louisville, Kentucky. The rescheduled Louisville meeting, the COVID meeting, was actually last year. So a number of years later. But one of the dilemmas was working through whether or not we were going to be able to meet in person. And as you know, state to state, that varied. And then city to city within a state, oftentimes it varied. And so we were working with the Omni in Louisville and trying to figure out if they were going to be open and whether the convention center was going to allow meetings. And we got to the point where we had to pull the plug on the opportunity to have an in-person meeting, or we would have never gotten the virtual meeting scheduled or planned. And it turned out that was the right move because Louisville was in fact shut down in September. When we would have met in person, we would have never had a convention. So kudos to MSP and Heidi and the team there that were able to pull that off. But it was very interesting, and getting people to present virtually, emceeing, if you will, virtually was very interesting.
You did a great job.
Well, you know what? It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I think you're a great public speaker. You're one of my heroes in terms of standing up in front of people and delivering a message. You do a fantastic job. And I don't mind doing it. One of the things that was amazingly difficult, more difficult than I ever thought it would be, is I would be delivering a message to the membership. People would log on to the morning sessions and I'd be emceeing, if you will. And Trace, I was talking to a computer screen, right? I was talking to my camera and there was nobody in the room. And it was so hard because, as you know, part of when you're speaking, you're reading the room and there's feedback and stuff's going on in the room. And this was so strange to just talk to a computer screen. So again, staff pulled it off. There was a lot of technology that we were relying on. And yeah, we were able to have a convention, which was better than canceling everything. And we kept our people safe. I think at the end of the day, the board felt like we made the right decision. Who knows what attendance we would or would not have had if we went to Louisville. But I think at the end of the day, it was the right thing to do. And it allowed us to have a convention. And so on an uninterrupted basis, we've never missed a year.
I remember a few months prior to that, you called me and you said, I've got good news and bad news. The good news, and it was great news, was that was when I was presented with the Ray Baum Water Technologist of the Year award. So that was the great news. The bad news was you're going to get it in your office virtually.
Right. Nobody was going to see it, but you're going to get it. Yeah, I remember that. And certainly awkward, but again, no more deserving person. The board deliberated on that. And gosh, it was unanimous and enthusiastically unanimous for you to receive the award that year. And again, super awkward because, when you make a presentation, you're used to shaking somebody's hand and giving them a hug and then getting out of the way and letting them take the podium and speak. And so it was, again, super awkward. You did a great job. But yeah, that was that whole year was so bizarre, so interesting. And then it was terrific the next year to finally get together again.
Absolutely, it was. It's hard to get by a year without seeing everybody that you come accustomed to seeing within this industry. That's why we started the hang during the COVID year because we couldn't see people. And we had almost 200 people join us every night after the convention to just see and mingle with each other.
No, that was a great idea. And that took the place of things like the Women of Water or the new member reception or the president's reception. That's what we kind of had to do. It was terrific to have that resource.
Now, you mentioned the Business Resource Committee, and of course, right before the convention, the main convention starts at AWT, you do a business owners meeting. And I want to say since inception, you've had your own forum where you conduct an interview or a panel. And it's always one of my favorite things at that business owners meeting. How did you come up with how you were going to do that and what you're going to say? Because it's always informative and also very entertaining.
Well, that's made possible because of the people in the room. The brightest and the best are in the room. And it actually, year one was, hey, we need to kill this time, put Brandvold up there and see what he can do. So that's where that started. And I think we were in Vancouver. I can't remember the first time we did it, but had Gary Garcia and Andy and Bob Lee and had some talented people on the panel. I shouldn't start naming them because I'll forget, but being able to ask questions and bounce questions off those folks and combine it with questions from the audience from in the room, it just makes for a real entertaining kind of a wrap-up thing. And that's kind of what it's become since then is kind of the end of the day, this, kind of takeaways. This year, Trace, I'll give people a sneak peek behind the curtain. This year, what we're going to do is that time slot is going to be reflective on misses or mistakes that you've made in your career and things that if you had a clean sheet of paper or could do over, what would it be? And it's going to be a look back. I'm going to collaborate with Tom Hutchinson on it, and we're going to talk about things that we just absolutely screwed up along the way. So hopefully people in the room will also have some things where they go, golly, I wish, at this point in our company's business history, we could have turned left, but we turned right, and it was a mistake, and it took us a while to get back on course. And so anyway, Tom and I are going to talk about some of the mistakes that we've made, and they'll probably be bigger, or at least mine will be bigger than anybody else's, but it'll be fun to have that dialogue at the end of the day.
You mentioned mistakes, and let's face it, that's really how you learn, especially in this business. And you alluded to this earlier. We're all competing with each other, but somehow in the AWT, we share knowledge and we support each other. So when we make a mistake, we don't necessarily have to have somebody else experience it. We freely say, oh, don't do it this way. I made that mistake. Do it that way. I have been a member of other organizations, and I don't necessarily see that. Why are we so sharing? Why do we try to make people better? Why does that come so easily for AWT?
Well, first off, I think that we're in a space where so much of our businesses is based upon relationships. Yes, you have to have the technical skill set. Yes, you have to know what you're doing. But at the end of the day, if our customers don't trust us and don't know us really well, we're not going to have the business anyway. So I think all of us realize that. So I think we remove the veil of a competitive threat early on. So again, based on these relationships, if I don't know the person at your account in Atlanta, it doesn't matter if I share technical information with you. You have the relationship that drives the business side of the equation. So I think as you get involved in AWT and you realize how important the relationship is rather than just the transaction, the veil of threat is removed and you share very freely. The other thing that's very interesting is as you know, there's hundreds of us independent water treaters across the country. And for me to talk to Bernadette Combs in New Mexico about a technical problem poses no threat to an account I have in Savannah, Georgia. So the geographic proximity of where our friends are in the industry also provide a buffer against that competitive threat. The only place I see a lot of people still, not a lot, but people hold things close to the vest is people. People. I still think there's a threat where I feel like you're going to come to Jacksonville, hire 3 of my people, and compete with me. That to me is a bigger threat. I think on the technical side, gosh, we're just very sharing, and we have a great platform of collaboration. I talked to Tony McNamara last week, and again, there's not a week that goes by that all of us, not just me or you, but members across our platform aren't talking to one another across the country.
Yeah, and it's fantastic that it does. One of our goals here at the podcast is to raise the bar in the industrial water treatment industry. And of course, AWT set the precedent for that, and it allows us to have those conversations.
No question about it. And I think we're getting better and better at that. And as you mentioned earlier, the resources that we used to have and the resources we have today are so dramatically different. People who are new to the AWT have no idea the breadth and depth of resources we have today compared to when we first started. It really is spectacular. And when you compare it, Trace, to other trade organizations, we're on par with the best in the country, in my opinion.
Oh, I totally agree with that. And of course, one of the things the AWT offers is the Certified Water Technologist designation. We're going to be talking about that because you're highly involved in what's going on with the CWT. Do you mind kind of explaining what the CWT process is now? And then maybe we can lean into what are we doing to make it even better?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, Trace, as you know, the Certified Water Technologist or CWT program was established in the mid 90s. I don't remember the exact year, maybe 94. It was talked about in 93, kind of got legs 94. By 95, we're certifying people. But it was felt in our association space that there should be some standard that we, as the industry trade association, could extend to our members and their employees that would designate to the industry that this person has met certain requirements that would assure a customer that they're dealing with someone who is a real expert in our field. And so we established guidelines. Some of them include time in the business. You have to be in the business a certain period of time. There's educational requirements. There's testing requirements. There's references you have to get from people. And once you pass the exam and you have the references and you've spent the time in the industry, you can achieve or receive a CWT, Certified Water Technologist designation. Historically, that program grew pretty quickly. There were 10 and then 20, then 50, then 100, 200, 300. But what happened, Trace, is even today, we've kind of plateaued at this low 300s. We've bounced around between 300 and 350 CWTs, and we've kind of stagnated there for a number of years. And so the board took it on themselves to kind of look into it. I don't know, was this an issue when you were on the board and during your presidency? Did you talk about this at all?
The issue when I was on the board was we lost an exam and we didn't get it back, and we had to stop the exam and we had to rewrite a new exam. So that's actually what I dealt with on my board term.
Well, so what the board did, and it was discussed during my tenure on the board, but our current board decided last year to really take some definitive action in this area. Over the years, it was kind of suggested that one of the problems with the enthusiasm for gaining the CWT designation was that it really was self-administered, self-designated, kind of bestowed upon members based on guidelines that AWT established. It didn't have that independent third-party piece that would be more broadly recognized, not just in our space, but across the entire industry. If you think about the PE designation when someone's a professional engineer, or the CPA designation for an accountant, or even the LEED standard that many of our members have, the CWT designation, while very recognized and very respected amongst us, amongst our group, didn't have the same gravitas that some of these other designations had. And it's been thought that the reason is because we were kind of a self-certifying process. So last year at a board meeting, the board decided to pursue ANSI approval or ANSI designation for our CWT process. So part of that was to stand up what we're referring to as a CWT commission. The CWT commission had to be independent of the current AWT bylaws and the current AWT board. So I was asked last year at just before the Louisville meeting if I would be willing to be part of that CWT commission. So what we've done, Trace, is we've put together a commission and we are pursuing, first off, ISO accreditation for our process. So many of our members have ISO certifications, whether it's ISO 9000, ISO 14000, and so they're familiar with that term ISO. ISO promotes kind of a globally accepted benchmark for organizations who are operating certification procedures. And so we had to first, and are in the process of completing, that submission that will grant us ISO certification for our process. Once we have that, then we can go to ANSI and say, this is what we're going to do. And they will then review and grant or deny our request for ANSI certification. So kind of a two-step process, but ANSI won't even look at what we're doing if we haven't created a standard that's in compliance with an ISO guideline. And the ISO guideline, for any of your technocrats listening to the podcast, it's ISO 17024. And it's the guideline around which certifications of personnel are structured. So that has been, we have taken and extracted out of our bylaws the things that have to do with certification, and have created another document, and it will be governed by this CWT commission that will be independent of the board, and they will have purview over our certification process that we hope in 2026 will become ANSI recognized.
Scaling Up Nation, we're going to take a quick break to hear from one of our sponsors. Hey there, Scaling Up Nation. Trace Blackmore here, and I've got a special water treatment solution that can streamline your water treatment operations. I'm talking about Commonwealth Chemical Specialties. These folks aren't just another distributor, they're your partners in industrial water treatment success. Since 2014, they've been providing top-notch products across North America. We're talking biocides, scale inhibitors, corrosion inhibitors, biofilm control, membrane anti-scalants and cleaners, virtually everything for your water treatment needs. You name it, they've got it. And get this, they've got nationwide warehousing for quick delivery. No more waiting around when you need those critical products. But here's what really sets them apart. Their technical team, led by Lisa Corbett DiMartino, a chemist with over 35 years of experience, will work with you to find the best solution for your needs. They even offer technical training seminars to keep you and your team at the top of your game. When you're looking to source your industrial water treatment products or need expert advice, discover why Commonwealth Chemical Specialties is more than just a distributor. Head over to scalinguph2o.com/Commonwealth to find out more. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/Commonwealth. Commonwealth Chemical Specialties, more than a distributor, discover the difference. A special thank you to all of our sponsors for their support. Now, let's get back to our interview. Now, the ultimate goal is we get more CWTs. What are some other things that are going to come from this?
Well, I think that what will be most beneficial is, rather than being recognized very colloquially amongst our people, I think you'll see government, legislative, and spec writers start to recognize the CWT designation as a resource of a person with that designation would become a resource for standards or for executing work in our water treatment space. Now, some of that is occurring relative to water management plans and things. There are jurisdictions where a CWT designation is recognized. But with ANSI, that ANSI designation, that independent designation of our CWTs, will have a much broader acceptance across a myriad of not just industries, but also government authorities and technical institutions. And Trace, again, the test writing will be independent. The whole administration of the exam will be completely different. I mean, there has to be an independence for ANSI to give us our designation. There has to be a proven independence that our certification is outside of board control. It's not a cabal that's being run by the board. It's this independent third-party commission. So that alone is going to give us the standard, the CWT designation, way more credibility than it has now. And what we're trying to do, frankly, is, we don't want the CWT to be really easy to obtain, but we don't want it to be unobtainable. So there's a fine line where if you just have 300 of us in the world that have this designation, people might look at it as though this is kind of a strange thing. Well, we also don't need 3 million CWTs, but there needs to be a number where, and not just domestically, part of what we're doing is there's a metric component, and our exam writing will have metric components so our friends in Europe can take this test. But again, 300 is kind of a club. A bigger number will give us more credibility. And I think that the board has been very prudent in determining in their research that an ANSI certified CWT might be more attractive to our membership. And we might get hundreds of additional really, really good water treaters that might say, well, the CWT I didn't care about, but if it's an ANSI certification, I'm going to take the exam. That's something I want to do.
Now, for the over 300 CWTs that already have that designation, is there something that they need to do once ANSI says the CWT is accredited?
No, they will continue to have their CWT designation. Trace, the commission is reviewing how continuing education credits are earned. And so there could be some changes to how people who have their CWT would earn continuing education credits and be able to renew every 5 years. That's all up for review. And I would expect some changes in how continuing education credits are earned. I think there'll be a broader array of opportunities to earn continuing education credits and to maintain your certification.
If somebody out there is listening and they're thinking, I want to get my CWT, should they wait until this accreditation has taken place?
I would not. I would think if they've met the years in service requirement and they've been preparing and they've been to some of your training, they've been to technical training, and they're on a trajectory where they're going to take the exam, now or in the spring, or I would continue on that trajectory. They would be unimpacted by it. I would not delay, because one of the things we don't know is whether the ANSI work or the ISO work that, we're waiting on these agencies to get back to us. And is that going to be 60 days or 6 months? So I would not wait. I would continue on the trajectory I'm on and would not hesitate if I'm preparing for my exam to go ahead and take it.
How do you see our customers looking at CWT once we get the ANSI accreditation?
So I think that in our world, our customers deal with ANSI a lot, whether it's on potable water treatment, that's ANSI 6061, whether it's on valves, Trace their valves that meet an ANSI standard. So they are very familiar with the ANSI accreditation and the significance of acquiring that. I think that our customers will appreciate the fact that their water treater now has an ANSI designated certification that will certainly carry more prominence than just our self-designated program that we have now, which of course is very robust. We only have, Trace, a 34% pass rate on our CWT exam. I think that's the number for the last couple of years. So far more people fail it than pass it. And we need to address that. That needs to be something that if 7 out of 10 are failing, then there might be something wrong with the process. So we hope that the ANSI process and establishing the ISO guideline and then the ANSI process, it'll help us address that. It'll put us in a spot where we can have better qualified, more prepared people taking the test and passing. And to your point about our customers, again, there'll be a marketing piece to that. The association will do some of that, and then our member companies will do that. But we need to all promote that when we have ANSI certified folks, that's a big deal. And when we're competing against, the national companies who sometimes are thorns in our side, they may not have a person with a CWT designation or an ANSI certification. So I think it's a big deal.
And I'm assuming that with that accreditation, as new laws are written for Legionella and other waterborne pathogens, it's going to be a lot easier for them to insert CWT into that language. Is that a true statement?
Well, yes, we've talked about that at the commission level, that once we have that ANSI certification, whether it's spec writing, whether it's legislative writing, we think that our ANSI certified CWTs will be a resource on a legislative level to provide real practical intelligence around the whole water safety space. So you bring up an excellent point. Once we have that, I think that we'll be more broadly accepted as water experts or water safety experts in that arena in particular.
Now, whenever you start a process, you don't know what you don't know. I'm sure you've learned a tremendous amount about ANSI accreditation. With that, were there any unexpected issues or challenges you've had to overcome?
So I think the biggest issue is getting our documents to be in conformance with that ISO 17024. The specificity of that document, Trace, is amazing. In terms of record keeping, in terms of the question banks, in terms of confidentiality agreements, in terms of the certification scheme, the scope, the jobs and tasks required, the abilities of the people, the codes of conduct. It is a very, very thorough document. So what we are putting the finishing touches on is our conformance document that meets that ISO spec, because the better that document is, the smoother the ANSI journey is. And I had no idea that the ISO spec would be so thorough. It's 14 or 15 pages, Trace, of just granular things, one after another, even to the point of disciplinary things and complaints and appeals against the process. And then there's an internal audit requirement. There's a review. You have to maintain control of your records, and you have to have an internal audit procedure in place, and just very, very thorough, very, very well thought out. And so what we've been fortunate enough to do is we took our current bylaws as they relate to certification, our bylaws as well as our operating documents, and we broke that up and assigned it to members of our commission and extracted the things that would apply to the sections, the paragraph sections and subparagraphs in the ISO document. So we've taken our certification things that we're doing now that are in our bylaws or our operating procedures, we've written them into the ISO standard where applicable. Then we've had to create new language where we didn't have anything that the ISO document required, to end up with a completed document that we submit to ISO for approval.
Has that document been approved?
It has not been approved. As we speak today, it probably has been submitted. Matt Coffindaffer has been handling the finishing touches on that. And as of a couple of days ago, it was being wrapped up. It could very well be in ISO's hands as we speak today.
When it is approved, will that be available for the membership to read?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We will have an ISO approved certification program that will then submit to ANSI. So absolutely, yes, every bit of it will be. In fact, we'll probably take that and write that back into our operating procedures. It will certainly be part of the commission's bylaws, the CWT commission's bylaws.
Well, we're recording earlier than this episode will release. So if it's released by that time, I'm happy to put it on the show notes page if you want to get that out there.
Yep, I will let you know.
Perfect. Well, Tom, lots of things going on around CWT. If you could just get one point across about why CWT is getting ANSI accredited, what do you want that point to be?
I would say the major thing that I would like to get apart on behalf of the commission and the board is that we are committed as a trade association to add prominence to the CWT certification. We're doing that by pursuing ANSI certification for our CWT designation. What that means for our members and their employees is they will have people recognized as water treatment experts with the same prominence as people in other industries where they've obtained ANSI designation. This will be a big deal, Trace, for those who have it now or who will be pursuing it. To be able to say you hold an ANSI accreditation will be a really big deal. And it's the next step in the CWT program, this independent third-party validation of the things that we're teaching and the things that our people bring to the table for their customers as it relates to water.
Tom, you brought up teaching, and this always comes up in a CWT conversation. The technical training that AWT does is second to none. It is elite, but it does not teach the exam. Can you underscore that for me?
Yeah, absolutely. And Trace, I'm glad you asked that question or brought that up, because one of the things AWT will not be able to do is ANSI will not allow the CWT Commission to establish a training program that teaches to the exam. We will have to rely on other people to teach to the exam. It can be done. Other people can teach the exam, but we can't. We have to maintain that independence from the association and the training they're doing and the exam and the certification that the CWT Commission will be administering. So again, if you attend AWT training, if you use and study the technical training manual, the raw materials manual, and then just in the course of your work, you will gain the body of knowledge you need to pass the exam. But yes, to your point, AWT does not now, nor will our designation through ANSI allow us to teach to the exam.
Tom, someone out there is listening and they're thinking, should I get my designation? What do you want to say to them?
Well, I think if the water treatment arena is your chosen career path, I think if you want to distinguish yourself from everyone else out there, this is the way to do it. It's terrific that you may have 10 or 20 or 30 years of experience in our business. But this designation, this CWT designation, that's an ANSI certified designation, will be that piece that separates you from everybody else in our field. It will put a validation stamp on your body of knowledge that you will have on your business card, that you'll carry into meetings, that you'll be able to deliver to your customers and prospects. And Trace, if people are looking for that thing that separates them from their competitor or from the big guys, this will be this certification will be something that we've never had before. This designation will be new to our space. We will be the only ANSI approved, ANSI certified, ANSI designated water treatment professional status that you'll be able to obtain.
Tom, what has your CWT allowed you to do over the years?
Well, I think, Trace, more than anything, it just means that I think to a customer, and I've never asked with specificity, but I do think that when you walk into the room and you have that designation, you are afforded a little bit higher regard than if you didn't have it. I know that I have become a trusted resource with our customers and prospects. I get calls from people for input on things that I'm certain is a function of my commitment to getting and maintaining my CWT status. So until you have that, you really won't experience it. Certainly, there are people without a CWT designation who are terrific water treaters. You and I both know many. But once you have the CWT status, it does afford you kind of a unique standing. I know, Trace, for Premier in our little company, we talk about, there's 300 of them in the world, and Premier has 4 or 5 of them. That's kind of a cool thing to be able to say.
I was 28 when I got my CWT, and I will say what that did for my confidence and what I obtained as far as knowledge over my career at that time. There is nothing that could have improved my confidence in going in and talking to that account that I was too scared to go talk about. I would say that that's what it did for me. It really helped motivate me to, it's okay to knock on that door. It's okay to talk to that person. You've earned that.
Well, and I think it validates, Trace, to your point, the fact that you really do know what you're talking about. You don't have to wonder if the person you're getting ready to call on is going to know more than you know. You kind of have validated to yourself that you know a lot about the water treatment space. And very rarely are you going to call on someone, and I'm sure this is true for you, very rarely do you call on someone who knows more about water than you know.
They know more about their water than I know, but as far as the problems and how to fix it, you're 100% right.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely.
Well, Tom, this has been very informative. Thank you for coming on the Scaling Up H2O podcast and sharing all these things, all these exciting things that the AWT is working on. I do have some lightning round questions for you, and you've answered these once. So these aren't the same questions you answered back in 2020. These are round 2. Are you ready?
Let's give it a go.
All right. Round 2, question number 1. What would you say your superpower is?
Oh, gosh, Trace, don't do that to me. People that know me well know that I don't have any superpower. I am so average. But if you really pushed me on it, I would say recognizing that I don't have all the answers, being perceptive enough to surround myself with really good people, and then listening. So I guess if it's a superpower, being perceptive enough to know that I don't know it all and that the collective group will come up with a better solution than I will on my own.
Yeah, if I may, and what I've observed, maybe we can put this in the running, is you can be extremely technical, but you're also very welcoming and open when you're having that conversation. So somebody that's listening to you never feels like they're less than. They always feel like you're sharing information with them instead of talking over them. I think you're fantastic at that.
Well, I maybe that comes from knowing that I don't know it all, and 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 always being willing to share the little piece that I know, the snippet that I know. In my experience, I'm always happy to share that. And thank you for saying that. It's very kind of you.
It's what I've observed over the years. So, question two, what would you say your biggest accomplishment has been
Like ever?
ever?
Well, not all of your listeners will appreciate this, but most of them will. I would say getting Joy to say yes to marrying me was probably my biggest accomplishment in my life.
It shows your sales ability.
Yeah, really, really.
What would you say that answer would be in water treatment terms?
Gosh, Trace. I always remember selling my biggest account at the time and feeling like I had a significant part in it. I didn't do it alone, but selling a significant sized account and going, holy cow, that's pretty cool. I got all the stakeholders involved and everybody said yes, and we were able to win a new account, and I had a significant part in it. I would say something like that, when you talk about from a business perspective.
Question three, if you had a magic wand that can change anything in the world, what would you change?
Okay, so that's really easy, and it's going to sound canned, but it really is something we live by. Water changes everything for people. And, there's well over 1 billion people today that won't have access to safe drinking water. So if I had a magic wand, my magic wand would ensure that everybody has safe drinking water, because it literally changes people's lives. We have no idea because we take it for granted. But I tell my friends, if they question me on that, I tell them, okay, don't use any water today, then don't use any water tomorrow, and then don't use any water the next day, and then come and tell me how your life's going. So my magic wand, if I could change one thing, it would be to get clean, safe water to everybody everywhere.
Tom, my final question, if you could recommend the top few books that everybody needs to read as soon as they can, what are those books?
Wow. So I love reading and I love holding books in my hand. I'm not an audiobook, Kindle kind of person. Gosh, can I give you types of books as opposed to specific titles?
You're welcome to answer it however you like.
Okay, so first off, obviously, anytime you can read a little bit in the Bible, I think it is life changing. So the Bible would be one. Find a biography, a favorite biography. And I think biographies are so amazing when you read a biography about people. I would say something whimsical, just something really fun, is a book that you'd want to read. And then I think a history book. History, we learn so much from history, and I think we forget it if we don't read about it. So for me, those, and then a fifth one, obviously, Trace, would be a business book, just something about our industry or just business in general. I will say that for me, my business book right now is Fearless Pricing that Casey Brown wrote. I think you're
Great
familiar
book.
with Casey. Yeah. And then my history book that I finished recently was Kelly Johnson's book. He ran Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works for years and was responsible for airplanes like the SR-71 Blackbird and the U-2 spy plane. I'm reading a book about AJ Foyt right now, which is kind of a myopic that's not just race tier one here, but more personal than that. And that's kind of, I'm finding that fascinating. And then my most recent whimsical book was about a character named Tommy Thompson. They called him Titanic Thompson. And he was kind of a swashbuckler, gambler, played in the first World Series of Poker in the early 70s, but before that, traveled the country and was just a character, gambler. And, I think in another time he would have been a pirate. So that's kind of my whimsical book. But those are my most recent or current reading. But I would say the Bible, a business book, a biography, a history book, and then something whimsical.
Tom, are you one of those people that can read multiple books at the same time?
So it's my curse. I will oftentimes have two or three books going on. Drives Joy crazy. But I'll start something, start reading it, and then I'll get in the mood to read something else, and I'll put a bookmark in that one and start reading the other one. Like I have two going on right now. I just finished one and have two going on right now. So yeah, I wish I didn't do that, but yeah, that's me.
I cannot do that. I'll confuse one book with the other. So I am jealous you have that ability.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying I'm good at it. I'm just saying I am prone to do that.
Well, Tom, this has been a great interview. Thank you for sharing so much about your life, the AWT, what AWT is doing with the CWT. And I just want to thank you for the second time coming on the Scaling Up H2O podcast.
Trace, it's been my pleasure, and thank you and thank your viewers. And again, appreciate all you're doing in our space.
Well, once again, thank you, Tom. It was such a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Nation, Tom gave me my Ray Baum Memorial Water Treater of the Year Award. He actually presented that to me over the year where we weren't in person. It was COVID, and he was just so gracious with that. He also wanted to make it a great experience because we weren't in person, and that's such a big deal to receive. That's the highest honor that a water treater can receive. So, Tom, thank you for everything that you did to go out of your way for that. I really appreciate that. And then, of course, Tom received his Ray Baum Memorial Water Treater of the Year Award in 2024. Of course, well earned. Tom has done so much for this industry. And talking with Tom and the things that we mentioned just bring back so many stories that I can think of. One of the stories I can think of is when there was an issue with the CWT exam. I was on the board of directors, and we used to send a copy. We had like one copy of the Certified Water Technologist exam, and it would go to a proctor center like a college or something like that. There would be a certified proctor there. They would sign for it, and then they would administer the exam. And then after everything was done, they were responsible for sending everything back in a special packet back to the Association of Water Technologies, and then they would grade it and do all the things that they were supposed to do. Well, somewhere along the line, that didn't happen. It was not returned. So we had a rogue test out there. So we had a test that somebody now had access to. They could have made copies. So we then took to the board, what do we do about having a test that was out of our controls? And I remember there were lots of conversations in the boardroom because writing a new test was not easy. And even if we call it an exam, it's not any easier. I know there's people that have listened to many, many episodes and know Angela Pike will yell at me every time I call it a test. Sorry, Angela, it's an exam. But we were facing writing a whole new examination. And that's just not a couple of questions. There's a lot that goes on with that. My fellow board members said, we need to make sure we get in front of this. So we immediately canceled all future exams. The CWT examination process was on hold temporarily. And then we activated an exam committee. And these fine people, they wrote exam questions, and then we had to do a cut score. And we had to make sure there were good questions and bad questions. And we actually worked with a group that taught us how to write tests and how to make sure they were good tests and how to update tests. And it was a fascinating process. So all of those things now create what we know as the current CWT. And I have to say, when I was a board member, that was one of the most horrific things that happened during my board tenure. The board took care of it properly. And then, of course, all the volunteers gathered around and they made sure that we had an even better test. And it is such a fine examination for what it is for the industrial water treatment industry. It's using standards. And now, as you heard earlier, it is going through the standards procedure to become even better. So thank you for all the people that are involved with that. I know I am proud to be a certified water technologist. I have a certified water technologist prep course to hopefully give you some confidence in becoming a certified water technologist. But I do that because I hold that certification sacred, because I know when people get that certification, it means they're serious about this industry. It means that they are wanting to make this industry better. And that's why I'm just so impressed with all the people that we heard about today that have been involved in the CWT and continue to make the CWT better and better so we can all be proud of having that designation. Earlier in the interview, we were talking about Tom Hutchison, of course, friend to the Scaling Up Nation, listener of this podcast. Now, Tom has been on twice. I didn't have the episode numbers at the time, but I do have them now. So first off was episode 127, and I called that simply The One with Tom Hutchison, so very easy to search. And that was on multi-generational water treatment business ownership transitions. And it was specifically about a paper that Tom wrote for the AWT where he interviewed 22 multi-generation businesses and really talked about what went right and what went wrong so we can better plan for those. The next time Tom was on was episode 426, and this was called Sustaining Success. Tom Hutchison on leading through generational change. And this is where Tom came on and he talked about all of the different things that happen after a transition takes place. Both great episodes, and I hope you check those out. Now, I sure enjoyed listening to all of the things that Tom talked about today. I hope he inspired you, especially if you're new in your career, of how things start out and then what they can become. There are just so many possibilities in this industry. I think that you are in one of the best industries that are out there. And if you are in this industry and it's the same one that I serve, I really want to encourage you not only to join the Association of Water Technologies, but to get involved with the Association of Water Technologies. Because let me tell you, if you write a check and you are now a member, they'll give you a nice certificate and everything. You can hang it on your office wall. What does that give you? That is your key to become involved in one of the most incredible organizations that I've ever been involved with. And maybe you're saying, well, how else do I get involved other than writing a check? Well, maybe you volunteer for something. And I know how intimidating that sounds. All of the things that Tom was talking about today take volunteers. And they take a lot of work, and they do it because they love this organization, because they love this industry. But when there's only a few people doing the work, well, that's a pretty heavy load. Or maybe you're thinking, Trace just interviewed Tom, and Tom has decades of experience. He's on these committees. What could I possibly offer? And you're right. If you're going to compare yourself to Tom Brandvold and you've just been in the industry for a year or two, you do not have his experience. But that does not mean that what you can offer is not needed. There's a specific skill set that you can offer. Maybe you're able to help them with some sort of technology that they've never thought of. Maybe you can help them edit something. Maybe you can brainstorm some ideas because you know what product is needed out in the field. And maybe some of these guys on the committee have been removed from the field for a while. So there are all sorts of things that you can offer. Don't compare yourself to what someone else has already done. Compare yourself to what you are going to do and the intentions behind why you're going to do it. Because if you are intent to make this industry better, like this podcast's mantra, we're going to make the industry better one water treater at a time, ultimately raising the bar of the entire industry. Of course, we're all part of that. And you can do that. You can do that through how you're working through your day to day, but you can also do that through volunteering through an organization and getting involved. Now, that's how you're going to give. And if you have a giving mindset, you have the right mindset, because what's going to happen is people are going to see you give and they're going to say, I like that person. I respect that person. I want to get to know that person. And that's how you're going to build your network. That's how I got involved with AWT. And that's how I have so many people that I can call mentors, because I had that giving mindset. I didn't know any other way to give back but to help. I had no clue what I was doing. And I had people that saw I needed help and they helped me along the way. So I hope this entire episode has inspired you to maybe do something a little bit more with maybe the AWT or the organization that makes sense for you, because I tell you through my personal experience, it was and has been and continues to be a game changer in my entire career. Nation, thank you for helping all of us raise the bar in the industrial water treatment industry. And we'll be back next week with a brand new episode. And of course, we're going to be talking to the fine folks of the American Boiler Manufacturers Association. And maybe you want to learn more about what they do and their upcoming conference. Until then, have a great week, folks.